the weekly show with David J. Maloney.
This week, David chats with legendary Tesla guitarist Frank Hannon.
And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome, everyone, to the weekly show. I'm your host, David J. Maloney. On tonight's show, we've got a really special guest. He's a true rock craftsman whose music has been the soundtrack to arenas, highways, and late nights for nearly 4 decades. As the co-founder and lead guitarist of the band Tesla, he helped shape a sound that stood apart from the flash of the era. It was a sound rooted in honesty, grit, and timeless songs which still connect across generations. Beyond the hits and tours, he's an artist always searching for new expressions of his soul through his music. And now, with his new solo project, Reflections, he's opening a fresh chapter. One that's maybe unlike any other we've heard from him before. Here to chat about it all when we come back from the break is none other than legendary guitarist Frank Hannon. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our featured guest tonight is a legendary guitarist and co-founding member of the band Tesla, whom helped craft a sound which cut through the noise of the late 80s with something more honest, more human, and built to last. From modern-day cowboy to love song, his riffs and melodies have carried generations down highways and through hard times. But beyond the spotlight in the stadiums, he's always seemed to be chasing something deeper. With his new solo project, Reflections, we get a window into another facet of the writer and guitarist behind those Tesla hits. It's a raw and intimate collection, which I'm excited to be able to talk about tonight. Here to dig into Tesla's legacy, the new album, and the soul behind the strings is legendary guitarist Frank Hannon. Frank, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, David. Gosh, that was a really cool introduction. I didn't realize all that.
So you've got the instrument in your hand now. How early did you, when you were growing up, how early did you pick up an instrument? What was your family musical or artistic? When did you first grab your first instrument? What was it?
Well, being born in the 60s, my mom was from the hippie era, and we, up here in Northern California, San Francisco music, Jefferson Airplane and Grateful Dead and Creedence Clearwater, all that music was really being played a lot in my home with my mom growing up. But my grandmother also played the organ, and one of my earliest memories was sitting on her lap playing the Wurlitzer organ in the living room, So music has always been something that I was exposed to at a very young age and gravitated towards. I remember going to a pizza parlor and seeing the big pipe organ in there and just being a little kid going, wow, the sound was amazing, and always loved music. But guitar I discovered when I was 10 years old in 1976. It was a great era for guitar music on the radio. I mean, right? The era for classic rock at that time was very influential on me as a guitarist to make me want to pick up playing guitar.
And if you ever scan through comments, especially on places like YouTube, there's quite a few about how your work in Tesla puts you in the conversation as one of the best guitarists of the 80s. How early in your playing years did you realize there might be something special or different about the way you played guitar?
Well, gosh, I know when I hear things like that, I'm going, oh, gosh, I'm not worthy. There's so many great, phenomenal guitarists that were before, during, and after me, but it does feel good to hear that some people do recognize maybe a difference from the genre of the 80s music. And I just think maybe because being influenced by the late 60s and the early 70s music, where albums, full albums would have acoustic guitars and electric guitars mixed together, folk music, blues music, jazz, all these different elements were still being put into music, and it was very young and creative at that time. And that's what influenced me, was that style. I mean, I love any kinds of different styles of music. It's like a meal. It has all these different spices, and I like to pull from all these different flavors and put it into my own style, jazz. I study blues. And if you listen to Tesla's first album, I was only 16, 17 years old when we were writing those songs. And I got started very early with music. At 10 years old, by the time I was 12, I was playing professionally with a little band at the Moose Lodge and, places like that. And then I met Brian Wheat, and he and I decided that we really wanted to go all the way and make it into someday playing Madison Square Garden, which we haven't done yet. We're still seeing that on the goal list.
What do you remember about the first time you met Brian? Does anything stand out to you about those first times hanging or being around Brian?
Well, when you're a teenager, and in that era especially, back then, we didn't have video games so much, or, you got a pinball machine maybe over at the grocery store, but you had to have quarters in order to
invaders at the place that you just go swimming at or something.
Yeah, you'd have to have some quarters to play that, which we didn't even have back then, So getting our neighborhood in South Sacramento, Brian was a couple years older than me, and I was 14, he was 17 or 18. And that at that age group, that's a big difference. But like I said, I had already been playing some gigs and parties and stuff as a young guitar player, and started making a name for myself as this young little punk hotshot guitar player kid in 1982. And Brian's band was already playing bigger clubs and stuff, and he needed a guitar player. And somehow, by fate, a twist of fate, my mom knew somebody, and his brother was at one of my gigs and had gotten in a fight with my singer at this party that I was at. And, we were all kind of competing with each other and knew each other from the neighborhood, because like I said, back then in South Sacramento, we were all pretty poor. It was for lack of a better word, a ghetto neighborhood, and, but there was a lot of kids that played music. Brian and his brothers and me and my friends, and we all knew each other from the neighborhood playing music together. And when I first met Brian, he was a little bit older than me. He had a car. He was further along in playing the clubs and parties, bigger parties than I was. But I was making a name for myself as a little whiz kid on the guitar. And so his drive and my guitar playing together just really made for a perfect team, and we've been together for over 40 years now.
In those early days, did you ever feel like what you and Brian were working on was eventually going to catch fire nationwide?
Oh, we never thought about it. Of course, it was a dream. It's every kid's dream when you're wanting to be, like your heroes, and that, of course, it was our dream to do that. But we didn't realize at the time the steps that we were making. Playing one club led to playing to another nightclub, to meeting our manager, who ended up introducing us to Ronnie Montrose, who ended up taking us to L.A., we ended up opening for Eddie Money. And one thing just started leading to another. But the key thing for me as a guitarist was learning to record. And I got a little 4-track machine, cassette tape, and using all those influences I was talking about earlier with acoustic guitar and folk and blues, and being exposed to all the hippie music from the 60s of Jefferson Airplane and then Led Zeppelin and all that stuff, and Rolling Stones, and being influenced by that, and then trying to create my own songs on a 4-track, and then having the band put those together. That's when we started really trying to pursue our own sound, is by mixing all of that. And if you listen to Tesla, that's what we do. We mix all of those things. Tesla doesn't just have one sound, Well, and if you listen to my new solo album, it's the same thing. It's got Monkey Kitty, which is this bebopping bluegrass acoustic, but then it's got Our Father's Love, which is just this heartfelt, melodic, bluesy sounding song.
You mentioned earlier about Tesla having kind of that organic sound, and they've always had this reputation for being real, with no gimmicks, just music. Looking back, how do you think that ethos kind of shaped the band's longevity?
Well, I think that we were never a flash in the pan. We had to work really hard, and we continue to work hard. It took a lot more hard work to build what we have, but there's a longer lasting foundation with that. and we have some very loyal fans. And I attribute a lot of it to Jeff Keith, our singer. His lyrics are always real and genuine from the heart, and his tone of his voice is real. And we didn't use a lot of echo and stuff. It was just genuine. And Jeff is a very genuine guy with his lyrics. And the other thing is, we always tried to write positive messages in our music, in the lyrics, like Love Song. Don't you worry, pretty darling, you'll find love again. It's a song of encouragement, trying to help a person going through a hard time. And that's kind of the general theme that Tesla has always put in our songs.
When you revisit songs like Love Song or Modern Day Cowboy now, do you feel the same? Do they feel the same to you as when you first wrote and played them, or do they mean something different now after decades?
Yeah, at the time when we were writing them and playing them, like I said, we were so young and just full of fire and piss and vinegar. We were just going after it. We weren't thinking too much. But now, being an older person, on the envelope of 60 years old, and looking back and reflecting on it, it feels even like they're timeless in a way. Of the messages and the lyrics are still, they feel more meaningful now. Even at the time we were writing them, they meant a lot, but they even mean more now after all this time.
And then that's why I asked the question. You mentioned the fans earlier, a few seconds ago. I would say fans it seems like they see Tesla as kind of a working man's band. How intentional was that identity, or how much of it was just who you guys were on and off stage?
Well, it was exactly who we were. We always just remained true to who we are and were, some country boys from Northern California. I mean, we grew up in the outskirts of Sacramento, which is not LA or Hollywood or any of that. No, where we're from is not even San Francisco. It's up in the hills. Jeff Keith, our singer, was driving a truck hauling septic tanks for a living when we met him. I had a job cleaning up garbage from a construction site during the day, and then I would drive down to Stockton to practice with the band at night. That hard-working blue-collar thing is genuine in who we are. People go, "Hey, how come you're wearing a cowboy hat?" I said, "Well, I've been shoveling horse shit for a long time, but it's real."
So was there a moment in those early albums, maybe after your debut or sophomore release, where you felt like, wow, we actually did it?
Well, see, now, like I was saying, looking back, I see those moments now in awe and amazement. Wow, holy cow, we actually did that? Like performing in the round with Def Leppard for over a year on the Hysteria tour. At the time, we were just doing it and we were just in the middle of it. But now looking back, I have those moments of disbelief and amazement and gratitude. I'm so grateful. There's some key moments like the Texas Jam, Cotton Bowl, 1987. One of the biggest concerts in America was in Dallas, Texas, with Aerosmith and Boston. And we were the support band. We went on at noon in the day. And, and I was barely 20 years old and just running out on that stage on fire as fast as I could. That was a pivotal moment, but I was so young, and in the moment, I didn't realize it at the time. But now looking back going, wow, what an amazing thing that happened,
You mentioned you used the word glamorous, and I will trim it down to what some people call the glam era, which Tesla came up during. Yet the band seemed to kind of avoid that kind of labeling. Was that something you guys were trying hard to do, or was it something just as a byproduct of the fact that your music was so organic and so different, or was it a battle at the time to avoid that kind of labeling?
Well, I don't think it was really a conscious effort on our part. I mean, we were just writing the music that we believed in, and we were trying to make the best full 12-song album with diversity and creativity and integrity and songwriting. That was our main goal. As far as an image goes, I mean, honestly, at the time we were a little frustrated because we could never get the cover of a magazine or we didn't get the publicity that we had wanted at that time. But looking back on it, I'm grateful that we didn't and that we just were honest and true to ourselves. And I'm grateful that we had management that encouraged us to be real and honest. You know, we were managed by Cliff Bernstein and Peter Minch, and they managed AC/DC and Def Leppard and Metallica. They were really powerful, big managers. And even Tom Zutaut, who was at our label, Geffen Records, he signed Motley Crue, which was one of the most glam bands of all time, but he didn't try to turn us into Motley Crue at all. He encouraged us just to be ourselves. And so we were lucky that we didn't have people trying to change us or anything, and allowed us to be true to who we are and were at the time.
Is there maybe a deep cut from the Tesla catalog, which you wish people, got into more at the time, or perhaps would rediscover now?
Well, yeah. On our first album, there's a song called Changes. Time's making changes, and rearranging in our life. And we played that song. It was a deep cut. It was never a single. I always wished it would have been a single, but it's a song that we play live now. And I feel great every time we play it because it's just so true. It's musically, it's dark and has a moody vibe to it, and the lyrics still ring true. So Changes from our first album is one of my favorite deep tracks.
Do you have a favorite studio memory from those first three albums? Is there a special studio memory that sticks out to you?
Well, yes. Those albums were recorded up in the woods of upstate New York, which is Bearsville.
I grew up in the Bearsville Flats.
Really?
Yeah, I went to Woodstock Elementary School.
Wow.
Yeah, probably know a lot of the same people.
Yeah, it was such a great memory. We lived there for 3 months, sometimes 4 months, making the record. So remember when you go through the little town square of Woodstock and you'd go...
Yeah, the Village Green.
Yep, you'd go a little farther out. There was a fruit stand there that made smoothies on the left.
Sunfrost.
You made huh?
It was called Sunfrost.
Yeah, he made a right turn on that road and went up around the bend and took a little dirt road, and there was a gorgeous studio up there called Bearsville Studio.
Yeah, what was that? Was that Glacier? I'm trying to think of the street. I can't remember the name of the street, but yeah, it would be a right off of Route 212, and you'd go right past, I think it was Sunfrost was the name of it.
And it was a legendary place.
Yeah.
Todd Rundgren built it, and Albert Grossman lived there. He was Bob Dylan's manager, and all these legends had recorded there. And our producers were from Manhattan, Steve Thompson and Michael Barbiero. They wanted to keep us organic and in the country and not distracted by the trappings of New York City. So they took us up to Bearsville, and we ended up doing 3 or 4 records there. It was such a great experience. We lived in a barn, and we would practice, and then we would go into the big studio there and record, and it was amazing. Just living there in the woods there. It was gorgeous country.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'd bump into people. I mean, like, Orleans, Robbie Dupree. There were a whole bunch of people, and there were a lot of artists who had summer homes up there too that you'd bump into. Yeah,
Robbie Robertson from the band, and
Big Pink.
Yeah. It was a great experience. And then what we would do is after we would get done recording there, we'd take all the recording tapes and go down to New York City and go to Manhattan, and we would mix the music. So all of it was recorded up in the woods of Bearsville, New York, and then we would take it to the city of Manhattan and get that energy, and we would remix it. And that's how we made those records.
Yeah, I mean, you could bump into like Meatloaf. I mean, there were so many people that you would Foghat. They recorded up there.
Yeah,
So many. It was a great studio that people loved. So we were just talking about recording memories. You've been on the road for decades. Is there a tour story that sticks out in your brain more than any other?
Well, I was just talking about Texas Jam. Gosh, it all runs together. We've got some great memories opening for artists. Like we were opening for David Lee Roth on the Eat 'Em and Smile tour. That was our first show, and it was at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And man, that was for me being barely 20 years old, it was like, wow, I can't believe I'd never seen such a big arena before, you know? One of the great memories I had is when we played at Barcelona, Spain. We were opening for Metallica and AC/DC. And let me tell you, that's a tough bill to be opening for those guys, especially when we're singing Love Will Find a Way, you know? Yeah. And so we got pummeled by the audience. Well, they made it up to us, and we came back to Barcelona, and all the fans were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. What happened to you?" And they were crazy off the hook. We played a show in Barcelona, and they were singing every note of every song at the top of their lungs. And you know how in Spain they do those soccer chants like, "Oh, oh, oh." Well, I was playing my little thing like this. And the whole crowd was chanting, "Oh, oh, oh." They were chanting the melody of the guitar louder than the guitar. It was so awesome. And I'm getting goosebumps right now just remembering it.
I was going to ask if you could play one Tesla show all over again, same year, same energy. Which one would it be and why? Is it that one or is there a different one?
That one would rank up there. When we went back to Barcelona and the fans gave us a double dose of their love and sang every note of the music, not just the words, but the notes, the melodies. They were singing it to us. It was pretty phenomenal.
Before we move on to some of your other stuff, is there any lesson or lessons from your Tesla journey which still kind of influence the way you approach songwriting today?
Some of the best songs that I've written, and especially on my new guitar instrumental album, have come from times where there's been some painful experiences and some melancholy feelings and emotions, and not even really trying to write a song, but just mainly just kind of just stumbling on a piece of music by accident. And if it is reflecting or sounding like how I'm feeling, and then being able to recognize that it's happening. So like you could just be sitting there watching TV, and then you can just go, and I went, "Oh, wow, I like that." So when I played that, I was literally just watching TV, kind of depressed because I had just gotten into a big fight with my girlfriend at the time. And my ears perked up because I wasn't trying to write it. It was just kind of writing itself. And it was just my emotions coming out. And that is the best way as a guitarist or a songwriter to write genuine music, is to not try to write it, but just play your instrument and tap into a feeling that you're feeling. You know, now if I'm feeling good, it might sound more like, you know, it'll be more up tempo, you know. So if you're feeling good, you're feeling bad, whatever you're feeling, put your feeling into the music.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to Frank Hannon of the band Tesla for joining us. Frank will be back again next week to finish up our interview, so please tune back in. Stay safe, everyone.